Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today I am doing a requested video actually on the Discord, and it was API security. So I was going to do a whole custom video of this, of basically API security, because one of the specific things they asked for was the OWASP top 10, and I just happened to check TryHackMe, and there is a specific OWASP top 10 API security box on there. So I'm going to go through it. This is part one. This is broken down into two parts. So we're going to go through it. As you learn cloud, you will learn API security, and you'll learn that it's extremely valuable because some of the biggest attacks have been, and they cover some of them, have been through APIs because most people don't fully understand that the sensitivity around APIs, you have to treat them like a credential. You have to treat them as a password. If you don't, if you don't treat them with the same sensitivity, you'll see some of the possible repercussions. So this is just talking about how to get into the box. So what is an API? First things first. This is something a lot of people get confused on, and we're going to go through here. This is the actual box, and we'll go through it, and we'll talk about APIs and how they work. But usually, an API is just kind of that middleman. So if my phone wants to talk to DoorDash, right, it's just making an API call. If you have your computer, but you want it to reach out to some website and grab some data. An example is some of the scripts I've done on this channel or on the Patreon is like Shodan, right? I want a script to go through and grab some information about Shodan, or not from or about Shodan, but from Shodan about a host, and then add it to my script, right? Well, and think about how you do that without an API. I would literally have to have a script that goes to the website and actually does user interaction, which is possible, but very complex. It's going to use the user interaction, right? And then it's going to bring that data back. Well, that's really complex when an API just allows us to hit an endpoint and with whatever information we want in the request, and then it will send the information back after it validates us, right? And a lot of times it does that through authorization tokens, headers, different things like that, and we're going to talk about it. So you can see here they're talking about they've got 700 million LinkedIn users, 5.4 million Twitter users, and then Pixlr online photo had about 1.9 million users affected. So pretty big attacks. You guys can read about the attacks if you want. There's actually newer attacks than this. I don't know when this box was created, but there's newer ones than this. In the LinkedIn breach in June 21, how many records? Okay, is the API documentation a trivial item? No. API documentation is everything if you do it correctly, meaning like if you're creating your own API, make sure you're documenting very well. But if you're ever stuck, like I use APIs probably almost daily, and you probably, actually not probably, I'd use them daily, and I can't tell you how many times I've referenced the documentation, whether you're using an EDR, whether you're using a SIM, whether you're using any other threat intelligence platform or anything like that in security, right? You need to read the documentation. I don't know how many times I've had people come up to me and go, I don't know how to do that. Did you go to their site? Did you try to read their documentation? They almost always exclusively have it broken down into what endpoint to hit, what information you'll get, and what you need to provide to get that information. I mean, it's unbelievably simple when you think about it, right? I hit this website, and when I hit this website, I get this information as long as I'm authorized to do it, right? That's pretty much breaking it down to its simplest parts. Now, it can get very complex if you're doing that programmatically and putting in scripts and or applications or etc. But from a simplistic standpoint, that's it. Now, when you're developing APIs, that's a totally different story, and we'll talk about that. All right, first one, broken object level authorization, BOLA, right? So how does this happen? So API endpoints are utilized for common practice of retrieving and manipulating data through object identifiers, which is what we talked about. So something is identifying that object in their database, whether it's whatever, doesn't matter. Whether it's like ID1 or whatever, it doesn't, like I said, doesn't matter. Now, BOLA refers to IDOR. If you have watched my IDOR box, you know what IDOR is, but it's insecure direct object reference, meaning I can directly reference an object that I shouldn't be able to reference. I should be able to see that, but I can, and why? And that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to actually hit this one right here, API rule 1. Oh, whoops, I put it right there after on 5. Okay, so we're going to hit API rule 1. When we hit users, we get nothing, right? Because we didn't put a user in there. But we can put a user in here. So 1. Let's get rid of this authorization token and this. This is for the last task. Okay. User 1. Okay. API rule 1, and then it's API rule 1/v or _v. And you notice I'm hitting the wrong endpoint. I'm getting nothing, right? API rule 1/v. Oh, I realize now that this is a totally different one. User. I didn't realize I copied a totally different one. Okay, so we hit it, right? This is all an API is. I made a GET request. What does this mean? This means I could actually go on this box. That's actually open for a reason, right? And I could do command prompt, and I could say curl, and I could say HTTP 127.0.0.1. And I know this is very small. I know you guys can't see it. It's not, you're not missing anything. MHT API rule 1_v user 1, right? And I can hit that, and oh, I put a quote in there for some reason. There we go. And I can hit that, and I get the same result. ID 1, username John, name, blah, blah, in JSON format. That's all an API is I'm hitting that actual thing. You can see I can do it a different way for anyone that's confused by APIs. I can go in here. I can actually go in here and paste it, and I get the result. All it is an API is something sitting there that when you hit the endpoint with a request, it presents that information to you, right? Depending on whatever it's set up to do. That's all it's doing. Well, the problem is with this is indirect object reference is I should not be able to see anybody that I'm not authorized to see. Well, if I know, for instance, that the API is looking for a user, in this case 1, well, what happens if I go to 2? Oh, now I see Alice, and then 3. Oh, now I see Bob. Now, this is something I've actually had this conversation with security, or not security professionals, with IT professionals, and I've actually had this conversation, this argument, where they've said, yeah, but I don't care if you know the users, so it's not that big a deal. Really? It's not? You don't see this as a big deal? Think about this from an attack perspective. Well, what am I going to do? Well, I can use something like Burp and go through and programmatically get a list of every user. Okay, 4, no content. I know there's 3 users, right? Do this on a large scale. I get a list of every one of your users. Why is that valuable? Well, what do you think's next? Password spray attack, right? I now have a list of every single user, their valid username. Boom. Okay, now I don't have to, it looks a lot less suspicious if I'm testing every single valid username, right? A valid username is extremely valuable to an attacker, but a list of every valid username is unbelievably valuable to an attacker. And so I've had that conversation and I've argued with these people. And I say these people because I've had this conversation with multiple people in the industry at times. And again, not security professionals, IT professionals, but it is very risky to let people see information they don't need to see. And in this case, they're directly referencing those things, right? So you can see here, what did they do? The way they fixed it in this case is they used an access token. So you can see they added authorization token, boom, and then now when they try to access it, it's invalid. Okay, that's fine. So it says here if you add a valid authorization token, only then will you be able to get the correct results. Now, you'll see that this is, you go to this and you change this to S. And now when I go to it, let's say 3, right? Please set authentication header. So what I need to do is actually go to the authorization token and set that to the proper user. So you're wondering, how do you fix this? Well, you need an authorization token that is validating the user is who they say they are, right? So, all right. So access token or authorization token is the fix here. Let's see, keep scrolling. Okay, they haven't added it yet, but that's basically what you do. Or I shouldn't say they haven't added it. They added it. We don't have the authorization token, but we'll show on the next part how to get it. So now, mitigation measures. Authorization mechanism that relies on user policy. That is very important. Strict access control methods to check the logged in user is authorized. This is really big. I've seen people that they create them, or they create apps and they create APIs where it's they basically are creating it for a small subset of people. And so they assume that anybody that is in there, right, should be able to perform all the actions. Well, the problem with that is it might be small right now, or it might be a group of you and trusted people. If it ever expands, if you hire new people, if you have anyone else come in and you don't know that you trust them 100%, you're giving them access to everything. And that is a very common missed flaw. And I get the question a lot. This is something that like fresh people in IT and security, they talk about all the time, is like the API security in general is very simplistic. What I mean by that is if you implement these things, it's pretty basic, programmatically fixed stuff, meaning um, you should be doing this in your it's best practices, I should say. That's the best way to say it. And but people that are new in IT and security don't understand how these things can just fall through the gaps. And it's because they don't have the experience of constantly fighting the battle. And what happens is these these developers, these all these different people, they have deadlines, they have quotas, they have things they have to get done, or their job could theoretically be on the line, and they aren't willing to risk it. So they take shortcuts. They don't know best practices, right? They don't have a checklist. There's automatic scanners and code scanners and static code analysis and all this other stuff that happens, but they're just analyzing the code for flaws, not the actual mechanisms behind it. And so it's very easy to actually have things fall in through these cracks, simplistically. So suppose the employee ID is an integer with incrementing value. Can you check through the vulnerable API endpoint the total number of employees? We already did that. That was 3. What's the flag associated with employee number 2? Well, let's change this back to V, and then we'll go to 2, and we'll say, and the ID username Alice, name King, the flag associated right there, 838123. All right, and what's the username of the employee ID number 3? See if we can make this a little bigger for you guys. There we go. 3, send that over, and that is Bob. Okay, now on to number 2, broken user authentication. So user authentication is the core aspect, all that stuff. Yep. So we talked about it previously. How do you fix the first one? Well, you have to have authorization, right? We have to have something along the lines of validating the person, who they are, etc. If you ever go to something like Shodan or any of the other, or VirusTotal or anything, they require you to have a token or a key, right? API key that is authorizing you and saying who you are, right? In this case, they're going to use authorization token. In Shodan and VirusTotal and all them, I think they just call it API key, but they're expecting that because that's validating you, because you're saying, I bought this, I own this, so it is me, right? All right. So, and that's why they say never share them. So one of the things that they don't talk about in here, but one of the things you see all the time is API keys getting leaked out. They might be on GitHub. They might be on actual hard coded um, in actual code or programs. Please never hard code a credential. And that is a credential, right? Store them in password vaults. Make sure they have checkout, check-in processes. These are things that you can be doing to harden that API, because even if it's programmatically correct, if you're leaking credentials, if you're not storing them, if you're not controlling them as a sensitive data, you're gonna be setting yourself up for failure. So, okay, now we're going to API rule 2. Let's go ahead and do that. API rule 2. And then I didn't see what else. User login v. Okay, so API rule 2, user login v. There we go. Okay. All right. So now the endpoint will return a token, which will be passed as an authorization token header get request to API rule user details. So we need to get our token and then pass it over, right? So here it says you can go to email and password, but in this case, what they did is they actually coded it to just check the email, not check the password. Now, again, I get this question when people see things like this and they go, yeah, but that would never happen in the real world. You've never worked in the real world if you don't think so. This stuff happens all the time, and people think that it's because the developers are idiots or they suck at developing and all this stuff. I promise you, they don't suck. They might, I don't know, but a lot of times you got to understand the amount of stress that they're getting pushed on to get something out there, and they maybe just had it in their pipeline. What I mean by that is I found vulnerabilities in web apps that I've ethically disclosed multiple times to large companies, right? And almost always, it's not, hey, thanks so much for saving the day. It's, yeah, we just didn't have time to get to it yet. We will get to it when we can, right? And if you've never worked in those environments, you don't fully understand how this happens, but it's very common and it's not crazy to think about. So as we can see, the vulnerability endpoint received a token. So we need to go ahead and do this. I'll wait till we get to the questions, but basically we're gonna request it. And you can see no matter what we put in here, we got to make it a post request. We're gonna put our email, and you can look, actually, I'm not even gonna put a password. I'm just gonna put email. And when it actually finishes, we get a token. We didn't even have to put our password. So it's not validating anything. It's just I guess it's validating the email. But if you have, let's go back to IDOR from the beginning, right, or BOLA, you can get a list of every user and in most cases email. And if you do that, now you come over here. If this is incorrect as well, now I have every username and password or authentication token, which is a password basically. And then we can just keep going down the line. So as we can see, the vulnerable endpoint received a token, which can be forwarded to API rules 2 user details. And then to fix it, they updated the login query to use the email and the password. So now if you put it in there, it'll say incorrect username and password. So can you find the token of HR? That's right here, this Coco whatever, right? Which country does sales belong to? Well, this one we have to actually go through. So sales, and we'll say send it. Here's the token. So now what we need to do is send this to user details. So we'll go up here and we'll say change this back to a get request and go to user details, and then we'll add a header in here, and that will be authorization token, and the value, which is our authorization token, right? And when we send it, if you look at that, sales at MHT, name Joyce, token, and it says address, country, China. So we just authorized as Joyce in this case, or the salesperson, right? And we shouldn't be able to do that. I don't have her username and password, but because it was incorrect and it wasn't checking for the password, that is a very easy thing to miss. If, for instance, if you have a board or a pipeline for development, and that is a stage that you're at, right? But you get to, hey, there's only 2 weeks left before this thing goes live. We don't have it functioning yet. We get it functioning, but we didn't have time to add the password, right? That's okay. Nobody will know because it's still asking for it. Nobody knows what it's validating on the back end. Let's just push it out, and then we will get back to it when we have a chance. Next thing you know, 6 months goes by, nobody's had a chance to get to it. I'm telling you, this stuff happens all the time. Okay, so which country? China. Is it good practice to send a username and password in a GET request? No, it is not good practice to send a username and a password in a GET request. All right, so excessive data exposure. So this is, hey, the API is giving us more information than we actually want or need. This is actually fairly common as well, because a lot of times the security-minded people have a different opinion of what is more information than needed. And that's usually because the non-security people, the IT people, the developers, all that stuff, they don't see it as an issue. And I'll kind of explain what I mean here. So we're going to go back to GET request, go to comment v1. So API rule 3, comment, and we'll just do v and then 1, which is the first comment. We can get rid of that authorization token, doesn't really matter. But you can see here's the comment, right? This is my first post, username bad user 07. The problem here is you're showing me your device, your latitude, and your longitude. Should I see anybody that's posting their actual location? Probably not. Now, does the company maybe need that for analytics and things? Maybe. But the problem with that is the company shouldn't be exposing that out there. It shouldn't be, someone shouldn't be able to go reach out and get that. That should be held internally. So how this happens, and they talk about it here, is because you could sit there and sniff the traffic and gain all this data, right? But what happens is the backend developer develops this API and is set up ready to go, and is assuming the front end developer is going to actually go in and filter all this data. Well, assumptions, you know what they say about assumptions, right? And I'm not going to say it, but you know what they say. Never make assumptions, basically. But so what you need to do is, number one, never assume anything about what someone else is going to do. Always make sure it gets done. That's one of the easiest ways. And then you can see here, they make sure in this one, it actually only presents what is needed. So this is something that happens quite a bit, especially because, like I said, think about the latitude, longitude. Is that actually sensitive data? Maybe it is to you if you're a security-minded person, because you don't want people knowing your location. Like I don't. That's weird, right? But is it sensitive data to maybe just a random IT guy who's developing this API? Maybe not. They might say, that's fine. I don't care if they know the latitude and longitude of the post. Well, that's great. When legal or compliance comes around a year from now, you do get a pen test done and they find this, and you've been exposing all your customer data, and now your reputation's in the drain. You have to go reach out to every user and explain that you've given their location to random people. Yeah, it becomes a big deal. So you got to kind of, understand that. So what is the device ID value for post ID 2? Well, we just go up here, we go to post ID 2, and we're going to say, there's the device ID. So it's an iOS 15.411. What is the username value for post ID 3? Well, we just go here and we say post ID 3. Easy enough. And there you go, username, hacker, hashtag exclamation mark. Should we use network level devices for controlling excessive data exposure instead of managing it through APIs? No. You can use network devices for additional security, but you should not be using network devices and relying on them because it's very easy for them to miss, right? If it comes in a different format, if it's not what they expect, right? They're just going to miss it and it's going to expose it. Where if you do it programmatically on the back end and just say never show it, I don't have to risk that, right? DLP solutions as well can help with this, but again, the problem is it can miss it, right? Understand that there's a big difference between, oh, our DLP solution missed the block, right? Or the removal versus, hey, it never was even allowed to be exposed. It wasn't even a field that was able to be out there. There's a big difference, and one's obviously better than the other. Okay, so lack of resources and rate limiting. This is actually, you've probably seen this on the news more than anything, and you probably don't even realize it. But um, usually, what used to happen, especially when crypto got really big, is people would steal your APIs, usually your tokens and things like that. And if you didn't have rate limiting, they would actually use it to start doing whatever they wanted, usually mining crypto, things like that. They're showing that you need rate limiting in this case for a DOS or a denial of service attack, or they actually showcase it as sending multiple emails and things like that, which is true. Um, but it can be used, rate limiting can be used across the board, right? If you're getting hit way more, when I say getting hit, if your API is being used way more than normal all of the sudden, that is a telltale sign that something is going on, whether it could just be someone trying to get in, someone trying to scan your systems, whatever. Either way, rate limit that because then, hey, stop. All right, they'll go away. There you go. Move on. Okay, so API rules 4, send OTP. So we're going to API rule 4, send OTP. We want B. All right, send it. What did we miss? Oh, we got to put an actual thing in there. So emails, we'll just use sales at, doesn't really matter what you use. Okay, oh, I guess it does matter. Test@gmail.com. Email. API rule 4, send OTP. We'll do test@gmail.com. Maybe they only have certain ones. Test@gmail.com. There we go. Okay, yep. So, and you can see 4-digit one-time pad sent on email. So what that means is every time this person does this, right, uses this API, and again, don't think of it as like you're using a curl request every time. Think about it as like whenever you click that, hey, forgot password or whatever they're using this for, right? Forgot password, need to recover account. Every time you click that button, it shoots this API, right? It goes boom, 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 right? Well, the problem is if you don't have rate limiting, and I just sit there and tap that button, or in this case, I would be an attacker just repeatedly sending this, what's going to happen? I'm going to send you 5 million emails. Well, that's fine. You might say, well, I'll just block the email. That's fine. But the problem is your API might crash because it's not meant to just send, right? And now nobody else can actually reset their password. And if you have thousands of users and they're trying to reset their stuff, this can be a really big problem. The other problem is, in this case, would be reputational harm, not just to your company because your API or your password resets down, right? But understand there's also what's called email reputation, and that your email might get flagged for marketing and spam and things like that, and you might start getting blocked by big email providers like Google, Gmail, Yahoo, all of them. And then now you can't talk to really anybody unless you reach out individually and say you need to whitelist us, right? That is a serious threat in this case. So what do? They put rate limits. Hey, look, let's see where they say it right here. Hey, look, you did it. You sent the 4-digit PIN. Awesome. They tried to do it again really fast. And it says, hey, no, you have just requested. You have to wait 2 minutes to do it again. So this prevents the constant usage of it, right? This is a very easy way to fix it. Now, this is why you also see CAPTCHA, because if you notice, if you go to Google and you Google something, especially if you're using like Google Docs or something, and you just keep doing it, they're going to start hitting you with CAPTCHAs. That's because of rate limiting, right? Because they don't want automated scripts and bots doing it. Ensure implementation of a limit. How often a client can call an API within a specified time. Ensure to define the maximum data size. This is big, right? Because you don't want to just basically be DOSing yourself in the sense of, hey, we're letting this person hit and they're pulling massive amounts of data. Well, if I'm uploading or downloading gigabytes of data and I have 5,000 machines doing that, well, really quickly you're going to be running out of bandwidth or resources. Can rate limiting be carried out at the network level through firewalls? It can, because easy. You just hit this IP or this API, right? Well, guess what? If this IP needs to get to this IP, you're going to wait 5 minutes, right? You can do that at the firewall level. What is the HTTP response code when you post a request using the email address? HR. So this is the secure one. So we want HR at MHT, HR at MHT.com, and they want us to hit the secure one, not the vulnerable one. And there you go. It's false, invalid email, but you got a 200 response code. What is the message? Invalid email. All right. And the last one we're going to cover is broken function level authorization. This is actually what most of you probably think of, and that is basically I'm a low level user and I'm able to see things that I shouldn't, which is high level information like admin stuff, things like that. So one of the example they show here is we're going to just go to it real quick. The API rule 5, users are vulnerable. Okay. And they're using a GET request. So we'll change that real quick. All right. GET request. And you can see they're using an authorization token. And then there's an additional header called isAdmin. And one is true. So is this person an admin? Yes. Authorization. There's their authorization. So what they're doing is they're validating the authorization token. They're saying this is this person, but there's nothing checking if the admin, if they are an admin besides that additional header. That's really poor security because anybody could just go change that packet and say, is admin value equals 1 now, right? And so what we want to do is we want to actually have it check the database where the user's authenticating already and check if they're an admin in there, right? Role admin. If they're not an admin, don't let them in, even if they say they're an admin, right? Or don't let them at least have admin access. So you can see what we're going to do is we're going to go here. We're going to say, let's see, what authorization header do we need here? They give it to us somewhere. There it is. All right. So we're going to say we are, who do we need to be? Okay, so we'll use this authorization token, and then we'll say is admin 1. So authorization token, we'll change this to Alice's. Then we need to add a header, is admin, and the answer is 1, right? And you can see they give us access to everything. I can see every user. Should I be able to see every user? Probably not. I should probably see something like this, forbidden, right? That's probably what I should see if I try to access every user as someone that's not admin, right? But if that's the only thing stopping me, pretty quickly I could figure that out. So what we want to do is we want to go through and say, hey, look, Alice's role is HR. It is not admin. So one of the key things here is this is more of an IAM thing, identity and access management, but you should have role-based access. You should not have access based on someone putting something in the headers, right? All right, so what is the mobile number for the username Alice? Well, right there, 12353222323. Mitigation measures, I never covered that. So ensure proper design and testing of all authorization systems and deny all access by default. That's key. Deny all access by default. The reason is because you can run into holes that you weren't able to test. It's kind of like firewalls, right? If I say kind of like firewalls, it's more like a application block list. You should block everything and then whitelist just what you need. You should not do it the other way around. You shouldn't whitelist everything and then block as you see bad things happen. If you lock everything down first, say nothing can pass, and then start letting privileges go, it's much easier to control. Ensure that operations are only allowed to the users belonging with the so role-based access. Make sure to review API endpoints against flaws regarding, yep. So this is a big thing. A lot of people test their endpoints, but they only test them programmatically or with scanners or something, right? Make sure you're manually testing and getting pen tests done to ensure that they are secure because you might be too close to it. What I mean by that is if you develop the app, it's going to be really hard for you to come in and go, I see the flaw, I see the flaw, because you're going to be like, there's no flaws in this thing. I built this thing. Like you don't want to be too close to it. Have someone else do it. Trust me, you'll find so many more things. Is it good practice to send is admin value through hidden form fields? No. It is not good practice to send is admin at all as the authentication mechanism. And then what is the address flag of the username admin? Well, we can go right here. Uh, right there, address TryHackMe 3432 $ at sign hashtag 2 exclamation point. All right, and there we go. So this is just the part one. We will do part two of the API security, but let me know what you guys think. Hopefully API security is something you guys are, oh, this was created 3 years ago. So sorry. But anyway, let me know if this is something you guys want to see more of. If you guys want to see me do like a custom version of this, the API security OWASP top 10 isn't going to change. So like if I do a custom version versus the TryHackMe box, it's going to be the same thing. Just I'll create a custom app for it. That's really the only difference. Um, but I can explain it with a custom app a little bit if you guys want. If not, I will actually go through and I'll just do well, either way, I'll do part two, and then we will dive in. If you guys want to see more, let me know. I know API security is kind of top of mind right now because of all the security attacks going on, but let me know what you guys think. Hopefully this helps you guys, and hopefully you guys have a great day. Thanks.